Hi, my name is Estefania Arizaga Arias, and my topic is a gluten-free diet and the quality of the diet.
Celiac disease is a serious autoimmune disease that occurs in genetically predisposed people, where their ingestion of gluten leads to damage in the small intestine. In a person with a clinical disease exposure to gluten, cause inflammation in the gut, repair exposure gradually damage in the small intestine, which can lead to problems are some minerals and nutrients from food. The symptoms of clinical disease can range from mild to severe. They can change over time and they vary from person to person. Some people have no symptoms or only experience them later in life. A person may not know that they have a clinical disease until they develop a nutrient deficiency or anemia.
Celiac disease has its origins set all the way back to the 1st and 2nd century AD. Greek physician Aridas of Cappadocia reported the first incidence of celiac disease and phrased it koliakos, from the Greek word kolia, meaning abdomen. It wasn't until 1888 when an English pediatrician, Dr. Samuel Gee, first gave an accurate description of celiac disease. Dr. Gee described celiac disease as a kind of chronic indigestion which is met with in persons of all ages. And he noted the regulation of food was important, therefore suggesting that dietary intolerances may be the source of the disease. Furthermore, Dr. Gee hypothesized that if a patient can be cured at all, it must be by means of diet. Following this discovery, in 1950, Wim Dick illustrated that the removal of wheat, rye, and oats had profound improvements on symptoms. It was later noted that gluten, a protein component of wheat, was the toxic substance. Today, celiac disease is the most prevalent food intolerance in the Western world, and it affects 1% of the global population. Considering that there are over 200 associated celiac disease symptoms, diagnosis can prove to be challenging. Furthermore, symptom manifestation differs from person to person, and some people do not elicit any symptoms at all. Common symptoms in children include, but are not limited to, abdominal bloating and pain, chronic diarrhea, weight loss, and vomiting. Interestingly, studies show that adults are less likely to have digestive symptoms and are more prone to display symptoms such as fatigue, unexplained iron deficiency, arthritis, and osteoporosis. Celiac disease is a complex disease because there are several factors involved. Essentially, it is an autoimmune disorder, meaning that the body attacks its own cells, tissues, and organs. Aside from gluten intolerance and exposure, there are other factors that cause celiac disease, such as genetic predisposition and abnormal small intestine composition.
For most people with celiac disease, switching to the gluten-free diet really improves the symptoms, and a person with nose improves in the days or week. You'll no longer be able to eat food that contain barley, rye, or wheat, including farina, gluten, flour, semolina, durian, couscous, and spelt. Having a gluten-free diet is easier than ever in some parts in the world, where gluten-free options are becoming more widely available. Because understand which foods and products to base tend to contain gluten.
The gluten protein is unique because its two parts, gliadins and glutenins, trap water and get sticky when they're wet, like glue. This is why wheat, barley, and rye flours are great for making doughs and batters. During baking, their stickiness also helps trap rising air bubbles so that breads and cakes become fluffy. A gluten-free diet primarily leaves out food made from flour, but the tricky part is finding places where gluten tends to hide. Oats are another possible hiding place. They don't naturally make gluten, but are often contaminated by wheat grown in nearby fields or processed by the same machines. The complete list of products that have gluten can feel long and somewhat random when you're first starting a gluten-free diet. This is why professionals trained in nutrition are available to help. Remember, for the most part, wheat, barley, and rye are the only natural sources of gluten. This makes other food groups automatically gluten-free.
Pros and cons of gluten-free diet. Pros. Diet is essential to treat celiac and gluten sensitivity. Choice can focus on whole foods. Safe to follow with proper nutritional plan. Diet can be adjusted to suit other needs, such as dairy-free, may improve lactose intolerance in some people. Cons. Diet can be very low in fiber. Nutritional deficiencies can occur. Food choice at restaurants are limited. Many fats gluten-free foods are unhealthy.
If you are allergic to gluten, you will know all about the pros and cons, but if you are just looking at changing your diet, these may be of interest. Pros of eliminating gluten. If you have a gluten intolerance or sensitivity, you may have inflammation or damage to the intestinal tract. Eating gluten-free can help reverse this damage and inflammation. Encourages label reading and more awareness of food. Leads to a healthier diet filled with less processed foods. Introduces higher quality grains, like quinoa, into your diet. Cons of eliminating gluten. Reduced carbohydrate intake due to lack of education on nutrients. Not all carbs have gluten. Lack of fiber from traditional sources can lead to digestive issues. Possible weight gain from eating gluten-free products, which often contain higher levels of fat and sugar. Possible weight gain as the intestinal tract recovers and begins to absorb nutrients properly. Possible weight loss and consumption of a nutrient-deficient diet from eliminating too many foods for fear of a negative reaction. Because of their premium nature, gluten-free products cost more. Need to know more? Visit winsup.com.au/gluten. winsup.com.
In Ecuador, there are still no exact numbers how many people suffer from this disease. However, in the ACDE during 28 and every 25 or 13 people were treated, including those derived from other healthy centers coming from various parts of the country.
Number 1. Celiac disease is often misdiagnosed. Over 80% of Americans who suffer with celiac disease are undiagnosed, and many of them have been misdiagnosed with other illnesses. It can take years before celiac disease is diagnosed correctly. In fact, the average celiac disease patient has to wait 6 to 10 years before they're correctly diagnosed. Number 2. There is no cure for celiac disease. And unlike most other health conditions, there's no medical treatment either. The only existing natural treatment is a 100% gluten-free diet. Number 3. Celiac disease is more common than you might think. 1%, that's 1 in every 100 people, has celiac disease worldwide. That's not taking into account people who are simply gluten intolerant, which is closer to 5 to 10% worldwide. Number 4. Left untreated, celiac disease can lead to other health problems. And as we learned earlier, the only treatment for celiac disease is a 100% gluten-free diet, which means that most problems occur when a person hasn't been diagnosed. Without an early diagnosis, the chances of developing cancer, diabetes, osteoporosis, or even infertility raise dramatically.
Celiac disease is an autoimmune inflammatory disorder of the small intestine precipitated by gluten. It is a very common chronic disease. It produces gastrointestinal symptoms, predominant chronic diarrhea. Monitoring the patient to verify of the death is essential to ensure that all possible complications, including malignant problems, are avoided.
Celiac disease is intolerance to gluten, a protein complex found in wheat and some other grains. When people with celiac disease eat foods with gluten, their immune response damages the lining of the small intestine, causing gastrointestinal and other symptoms. The selection of gluten-free foods in the grocery store is proof enough that many people worry they might have celiac disease. But should doctors be screening people for it? Remember, screening means looking for disease in people without symptoms or signs of it, and screening for celiac disease typically involves drawing blood for antibody levels and following up any abnormal findings with an intestinal biopsy.
Thank you.